Welcome back to the PBC. It's your boy PBK9s giving it to you the way I always do. Fair and unbiased, raw and uncut. Some gonna like it and some ain't, man. We got a great episode today where we talking about Grand Champion Buck once again. And we gonna correct some things, or not necessarily correct some things that I said, but just correct some things that's in the air in general. You know, the last video when I was speaking about Buck, I think it was the live, one brother got into the comments and said, Buck does have tombstone in it, and he showed me the pedigree where it's about like tombstone all over the pedigree, at least 50%. So I want to correct that brother with the basically with the facts. You know what I'm saying? And that's why I always say you can't really go off these online peds all the time. You know, big shout out to all the brothers down in the chat. Big shout out to all the sisters down in the chat. All the brothers and sisters that's listening, no matter where you at across this good old green earth. Big salute and big shout out to all the pet lovers and everybody that's taking care of whatever pets you got across the earth. You know what I'm saying? It's your boy, like I always say. Let's get into this, man. And what I want to do for y'all brothers today, I'm gonna give you a great interview that the brother Battlebred Concepts did with Mr. Pat Patrick, right? And this is not to it's going to be a review, a review or my reaction, whichever one you want to call it. But it's not a review on that brother's interview. I'm only using the interview to touch on a couple points that we want to touch up on. Basically, it's the Buck pedigree. What is Buck really bred like? And I want you to hear it from the folk that come from that era where the dog, where the dog was out. I don't want you to hear it from people that typed in on online ped, because I always say anybody, anybody can type a ped in on online ped and make you think this, and it can lead brothers down the wrong direction. And then you're wondering why when you breed this to this, it's not working for you. When you breed that to that, it's not working for you because it's really not clicking because the blood is not what you think it is. So we're gonna speak about that, and what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna let that brother interview play on certain parts where I want y'all to hear, and then I'm gonna stop it time to time to give my review on what he's speaking about. So like I said, this big salute to the brother Battlebred Concepts. This is, like I said, this is just to speak about the Bolio dog, the buck dog, and how the buck dog is bred. If you want to check that brother interview out, which I'm quite sure most of y'all, or a lot of y'all done checked it out already, go check it out. Check out Battlebred Concepts on his YouTube channel. Like I said, great interviews. Part 1, 2, 3, and 4. I want to say this is part 4. But what we're gonna do, like I said, we're gonna listen to this, and I'm gonna stop it time to time. I'm gonna be stopping it when I hear something that I want to address or whatever. And like I said, this whole video that I'm doing, I'm not trying to contradict nothing that brother did the interview on what Mr. Pat Patrick said. No, none of that. I'm stopping it and I'm gonna comment on it according to everything that he's given is the truth. So let's get into this, man. You know where you got it from. You know how I give it to you. Let's go.
How many times did Bolio change hands?
I'm not positive on that. I think he might have started out. What's the name of his parents? Klaus with a K. Apparently, I guess it was Eddie Klaus had him because his parents were Klaus's Zeke and Klaus's Goldie. But then I think he went to Maurice Carver's yard. I'm not dead sure on this stuff. I think he went to Maurice Carver, and then later on, I think I know that for a while he was in the hands of Norman Hooton, I think it is, because Norman Hooton talked about Bolio going with him he run a trap line, and Bolio would kill the animals that were in the trap. He'd finish them off, and he loved it, and he'd be screaming when you were getting close. He'd be screaming, and so I know Norman Hooton had him for a while, and then maybe I'm not sure if Bennett Clayton ever had him. I'm not sure on that. Anyway, I think Bennett Clayton did have him, maybe, but I'm not positive on that. Anyway, Indian Sonny got the dog after that. Maybe he got it from Bennett Clayton, and then Indian Sonny had stolen a very important dog from me, so I had no love for the guy. But I didn't steal Bolio. A guy I knew called Lou Lewis, he stole Bolio, and then Bolio bit a kid up where he lived, so he was sort of a hot potato there, worried about getting in trouble over him biting his kid. And I was doing business with Lou and knew him, and I think I already knew that he had Bolio. And then he asked me if I would keep Bolio, where he could breed to him, but he'd be out, be 100 miles away from where he bit the kid. So I was thrilled to get Bolio, and I had no...
Now, first thing I will say, before we even get into the buck talk, Bolio was scattered around. It's a big high chance. It's a high chance that a lot of dogs that's registered up under other dogs, Carver dogs, these kind of dogs, could be Bolio bred dogs. It's a very, very high chance. You see how many people own that dog? And like I said, this conversation is not to really focus on Bolio. We want to focus more on the buck, so I'm gonna get to that. But I just had to stop it right there because I didn't want to bring it back and then speak about something that he was speaking about at the beginning of the interview. And like I said, some parts of the original interview have been cut out in this part right here that I got because I didn't want to really focus on certain parts in certain areas. So like I said, we kind of focusing on the buck part or the buck conversation. If you want to go see that brother interview, go check it out, like I said, on his YouTube channel.
No, I didn't owe Sonny a damn thing because he stole my precious tater dog. And I found out years later that Sonny had sent him to Bert Klaus because Sonny had a friendship with Bert Klaus. So Bert Klaus was in on it. Bert Klaus knew that was a stolen dog. And the dog Tater was half Klaus's blood. So Bert Klaus was a real asshole, and Sonny is too. And they so the dog ended up at Bert Klaus, and the dog had hardly a tooth in his head at that time, and he was 6 years old. Naturally, I had a big grudge against Sonny. So I was not about to say, oh no, I can't take Bolio. He's a stolen dog. I didn't even think twice about it. I was thrilled to get him, and that's where he ended up with me, where he lived to be about 13 years old and died in my yard. But yeah, I think Bennett Clayton. I think Sonny got him from Bennett Clayton, and I think Bennett Clayton. I know that for a while Norman Hooten owned him. I think Carver had him, and of course Eddie Klaus, the dog was born in his yard apparently. So that's what I know about the Bolio changing hands.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's the truth to the best I know it. Although I'm a little shaky on, before Sonny. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure it was Bennett Clayton that had Bolio, and Sonny purchased him from Bennett Clayton. And then I know for a fact that Norman Hooten owned him for a while because I read about him talking about Bolio. And then of course, I'm pretty sure he was in Carver's yard because I think Carver and Hooten were pretty thick, so he's probably in Carver's yard, and then Carver gave him or traded him or something to Hooten, and then maybe Hooten, how he got from Hooten to Bennett Clayton to Sonny, I'm not just dead sure. I wouldn't bet my life on it. I could be off on some of that. But then I know Lou Lewis stole the dog, put him with me for safekeeping, and that was the end of his changing hands.
Okay. So isn't Lou Lewis the one who stole Bolio and gave him to you, isn't that the same man
He
who
didn't
stole?
really give him to me. He put him with me. He still, was breeding to the dog. He was there, but he didn't just say, "Here, he's your dog." He still considered himself, the owner of the dog. But naturally, if I'm going to have the dog in my yard, I can breed to him as many times as I want. And the fact of it is, he didn't treasure Bolio the way I did. To me, Bolio was a super dog, and I bred the shit out of him. Lewis didn't breed to him much. Once or just a couple, 3 times. He was higher on the stuff, the blood that he had. But he didn't give me the dog. He just put the dog with me. So we were like, I guess, partners on the dog, you could say.
Okay. But isn't Lou Lewis, he stole the dog, placed the dog with you. Isn't that the same man that eventually stole the dog from you?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it is. I'm trying to think of the time. Yeah, he stole the son of Bolio right out of my front yard. I was real proud of the dog, and I had him out in the front yard. I wasn't expecting anybody to steal him. And the way he was able to get away with it is he was supposed to be my friend. So if we opened the door and saw him there, he could just pretend like he was petting the dog. But he just seen an opportunity. I didn't find this out till I was out of the dogs. I didn't find this out till years later. And then a guy that was real thick with Lou Lewis, he told me that Lou Lewis had stolen my dog. So I didn't know that for years later. If I'd known that, but Lou Lewis was a piece of shit. And he was a dishonest, untrustworthy, backstabbing friend. If you couldn't really call him a friend, but sometimes I'm a little naive, and I always thought he was my friend. I didn't know all the dirt that he done me, and so now I hate his guts. But back then, we were friends. People jump to conclusions. They say, "Oh, Patrick stole Bolio." No, I didn't steal him. I knew he had been stolen because Lou Lewis told me that he got him, but I had nothing to do with it. And then when he offered me the dog, I jumped on it. But like I say, he didn't flat out give me the dog. He just put the dog with me.
Pretty much a co-own then?
Yeah, you could say that. You could say that we co-owned the dog because he didn't feel like it was safe to keep the dog up there where Bolio bit a kid. And I know Bolio would bite a kid. He was, anybody under about 10 or 12 years old, they better stay away from him because I don't know why, but he would bite a small person or a kid.
Mm.
He bit Emily's son, but fortunately, he bit the coat, and we were able to break him off before he hurt him. Emily was who I lived with for till she died. Sort of common law wife, I guess. She helped me out a tremendous amount. She was a great help to me in the dog. She did a lot of stuff, and she could handle dogs, and she had pit bulls when I met her, so she wasn't a stranger to the pit bulls. She had pit bulls when we first got together, and she helped me with everything.
Sorry for your loss.
Yeah. Thank you.
What is the true breeding behind Grand Champion Buck?
Buck is a heavy Bolio dog, so he comes under the category when you asked me before about what Bolio produced. Buck's father was a dog called Little Tater, and Little Tater was from 2 ROM dogs that were directly sired by Bolio. Bullboy Bob was an ROM dog sired by Bolio. I forgot to tell you that last interview, but Bolio sired Bullboy Bob off of Tuffy, and Bullboy Bob went on to make ROM, and then Bolio sired Red Baby, and she went on to make ROM. So there's 2 ROM dogs that Bolio produced. I think there might be another one. But anyway, so the sire of Buck is a dog called Little Tater. He's sired by Little Tater is sired by Bullboy Bob, which is off of Red Baby and Tuffy. I mean, it's off of Bolio and Tuffy. Sorry about that.
All right.
Let me see. Let me make sure. I'm sort of moving too fast. Anyway, Buck's Little Tater is Buck's father, and Little Tater was sired by Bullboy Bob, who was sired by Bolio out of Tuffy. And then Little Tater's mother was Red Baby, who's off of Bolio and a pure Klaus bitch. So that's the breeding on the father of Buck. He's half Bolio, off of 2 ROM, son and daughter of Bolio. Then on the bottom side, Buck is out of a 3/4 Bolio dog. Her name was Red Lady, and I can't remember who I bred Bolio to get Red Baby. It's been 15 years. I'm sure it's on the pedigrees online and everything, but anyway, the bitch's name was Red Lady, and she was 3/4 Bolio. So Buck is a 5/8 Bolio dog, 1/2 on the top and 3/4 on the bottom. So that's his breeding.
Now, I will say, I had some dogs coming down off Little Tater from Crossroad. You know, he had several dogs that, now that I'm, they're talking about the Little Tater dog, I remember looking in the pedigree, seeing Little Tater here, Little Tater there, Little Tater. And Crossroad had several dogs that look like this dog that you're looking at now, which is, that's STP Buck up there on the screen. But Little Tater is the dog that's stretched out that I was showing. And just like Patrick said, you can see the resemblance in both dogs. They look damn near alike. You know, Little Tater and Buck look damn near alike. But no tombstone in this dog. You know what I'm saying? Straight Bolio, just like I was saying on the video. You know, it's 5/8, like he said, but the other 3/8 is not tombstone. So that's your Bolio dog. That's why I asked, is your Bolio dogs without the tombstone your better dogs? You know what I'm saying? That's why I asked that, because you know, you can look at the pedigree and then look at the offspring of these dogs and compare the offspring. You know, you can't compare Mayday offspring because Mayday is got the Red Boy Jocko in them. I'm talking about a tombstone Bolio dog offspring compared to the Bolio dog's offspring. And like I said, this is my opinion. And I'm asking, I was really asking, which dogs do you think produce the better dogs, the tombstone Bolio or the Bolio? You know, I like the Bolio stuff when it comes to the old school stuff. I feel like the Bolio brought more to the table. I feel like the tombstone, just like Mr. Don Mayfield said, the tombstone was when it comes to a situation where you're trying to match a pedigree to something that is really not. You know what I'm saying? But like I said, I get a little flack from it, from different tombstone fans out there and different things or whatever. One brother tried to say it in my comments that all the Buck dogs look like tombstone. You know, when that's not true. You know, that's why I say, when certain people put in these online peds and it's not right, they can lead you down the whole wrong direction, and you can be starting your yard off a whole line of dogs that's really not off of what you think they off of. You know what I'm saying? So if you was watching that video when we were saying the dog didn't have no tombstone in him, if it was one dog back there that I may have missed. But like he said, it was 5/8 Bolio, and the rest of the stuff was going to other dogs that didn't involve tombstone.
Little Tater to Red Lady. Anybody that's got the big Stratton book, the big flat one, they can see Buck posed. He's stretching out. He's on a chain, and he's stretched out. It's a broadside photo of him. And then in the same book, there's a similar photo of Little Tater. And anybody that looks at those two pictures and compares the two dogs, I don't think they'll have any doubt that Little Tater was the father of Buck. They look extremely similar.
Okay.
But that's the true breeding on Buck.
All right. Now, what was your relationship with STP?
Absolutely none. I didn't even like the guy. He didn't get Buck from me. I sold Buck to some guy back near where he lives. The guy said Buck was cross-eyed, so I said, okay, send him back, and I'll replace him. And he was getting ready to send Buck back to me when a guy named Waldman purchased Buck from him. So he called me back and said, never mind, I don't have the dog anymore, you don't need to replace him. So Waldman had the dog, and then the story I got is that Bemis was over there at Waldman's place to buy a particular dog, and a kennel fight broke out between Buck and the dog that he had originally come over there to buy, and Buck beat the shit out of the dog. So STP said, I want to buy that dog. I want to buy the one that just kicked ass in the dog I was going to buy. So I don't know what he paid for him, but it's probably a lot. But he bought, Beeman bought the dog, and Bemis, I mean, and I don't like the guy, but he's a pro. He's a good handler and conditioner. Like I said, I don't like Bemis, but the reason I don't like him is he wrote a story about Buck and never even mentioned my name, sort of like the dog dropped out of the sky, and it pissed me off. I mean, how hard is it to say where the dog came from? But he wrote a whole 2 or 3 page story in the journal. Never said a word about where the dog come from. And I thought he was kind of a stupid breeder because he never loaded up on Buck. He had the dog, one of the greatest dogs in history. He had him sitting in his yard until he died. And when Buck died, he didn't have anything off of Buck. Other people had come to him and paid him to breed the Buck and doubled up on him. Other people had gotten the Buck bred pretty good. But he was the owner of the dog. He could have bred the Buck as many times as he wanted and kept as much as he wanted to keep. He didn't do it. He didn't. And so I didn't like him because he's an asshole, and I thought he was a stupid breeder. But as far as a conditioner and handler, he was first class in that department. So he helped Buck go as far as Buck went, which was, he's one of the best dogs that there ever was. And Bemis helped get the full potential out of the dog. So I'm glad about that.
Mm-hmm. I understand.
But I had no real relationship with Bemis. When Buck got so big and everything, I thought that he should know his true breeding because I had phonied up the papers on him, and I just did it. It's not something that I'm proud of, but that's the truth. Is I had put down a wrong pedigree on the dog, so I never dreamed he would become such a superstar. And when he did, I called the guy up and I told Bemis how Buck was actually bred, and so I guess that's where the controversy started. Is he was registered one way, and then they see different pedigrees. So I can understand, if people are all pissed about that, that's the way it is. I guarantee you about 95% of the big time dog men have lied about something. If they think that they're all telling the gospel in every single dog, they're living in the fantasy land. I know that Blue Money, the champion Blue Money, that was Bert Charles' dog, and he registered off of being off of his Corvino dogs. And I think Crazy Mary, too, is supposed to be the mother. Well, the mother was a daughter of Bolio that Indian Sunny had purchased from me and sold to Charles. And Charles just didn't want to give the dog credit, But anyway, that's the true breeding on Buck, and my relationship with Bemis.
Now, like I said, a lot of this interview I cut off because I only wanted to get to one point. How Buck was bred. The pedigree that we read on the video that I did a couple days ago, that was the right ped. There was no tombstone in the dog. The only thing I said, I said I needed to speak to STP to see how he was bred. But when you listen to Mr. Patrick speak, STP didn't even know how he was bred, and Mr. Patrick later told him about the dog and about the real pedigree once the dog became, a more popular dog. Now, everybody who made them breedings with Buck before Mr. Patrick told STP that how the dog was bred, everybody that made breedings to him at that point was breeding off of the fake pedigree. You know what I'm saying? So it's a good chance that they got great dogs. There's a good chance that they didn't get great dogs. You know, and you gotta really look at it because it kind of shifted. It kind of shifted the way history. You know what I'm saying? It kind of shifted history when it comes to them particular lines of dogs. And Mr. Gastons and anybody who ran that Buck stuff, all the Bolio stuff, anybody who ran it, if you was breeding off of what you thought was the ped, it's a good chance that you just, like I said, went down the wrong road. You know what I'm saying? Went down the wrong road. And there's a lot of them brothers who had the wrong ped who never switched their ped back, even after Mr. Patrick said, oh, they coming off of this or they coming off of that. You know? So at the end of the day, man, like I always say, and you heard what he said, a lot of people did that. 95% of all the bulldoggers had something that they lied about when it comes to their dogs. 95% is a lot of bulldoggers. That means you really couldn't trust nobody to say, oh, this is guaranteed to be off this. This is guaranteed to be off that. You know what I'm saying? And speak about it like he said, speak about it like you had the gospel or the Holy Grail and you knew everything about them particular dogs because everybody had a little funny dud stuff that they was doing. Every single count. You know what I'm saying? You can't prove that they lying about this or lying about that. But, the man speaking from his era and what was going down in his era when it comes to these dogs. Now, one thing for sure is Buck damn sure look like Little Tater, you know. And the man know who he bred the dogs with. The man know, like he said, he's not proud of it, but he did make a fake pedigree for him. And once the dog became real popular, like I said before, he gave him the real deal. But imagine that happening in modern day time, and you trying to go back to the registry and correct something. They'll probably, boot you out of the registry because you lied and you used a fake pedigree. May do it. It just depends on how big your name is and to the registry at that point. And this is back in the day, so and I think he said Mr. Greenwood was the one that was running the registry back in them days. So there's no telling how their relationship was. The man who's running the registry might be real cool with the man who's calling in about the fake pedigree or whatever. Now, what if somebody else would have called and said, Patrick didn't register these dogs right. He lied about these dogs. These dogs aren't off Golden Boy. They are off Little Tater. He said one pedigree said Golden Boy, but the real pedigree is off Little Tater. What if somebody else would have called the registry and did that? You know what I'm saying? There's a big difference between then and now. These brothers in today's time, a lot of them aren't true bulldoggers. A lot of them, like I said, they're about the money. And it's about who know who at the end of the day. A lot of these brothers, they'll railroad you. You got to really be careful out here in this dog game. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, my whole point of showing this interview and speaking on it was just one particular situation. What was Buck bred like? You know what I'm saying? He made some hellified dogs. One thing Mr. Patrick had correct, he was one of the best dogs ever. He was one of the best dogs ever. He can be in that group, that conversation. You know what I'm saying? So what was his pedigree really like? And which dogs did he make the best puppies off of? You know what I'm saying? Which dogs? Because we see when you go back and look at like Macho Buck stuff, you know what I'm saying? He looked about like STP Buck a little bit, but he got the Red Boy Jocko stuff in him. See, I see that Red Boy Jocko and the Bolio or the Buck went real well together. A heavy bred Bolio dog without the tombstone, bred into that Red Boy Jocko stuff, did real well. And you know how many years that brothers bred the Red Boy Jocko to the Bolio or the tombstone Bolio, chasing that Buck dream, chasing a dog that was going to be just as great as Buck was, or just as great as Macho Buck was. You know what I'm saying? not buck, but more or less macho buck, and the dogs that got the Red Boy Jocko cross into the buck stuff. You know, but a lot of brothers, they didn't use the same formula, but they used the same lines, and they didn't get it. They thinking, especially when the lines are saying Tombstone Bolio, they keeping the tombstone in it, and they getting a less quality dog sometimes. Sometimes, you know, not saying it happened all the time, but sometime it did, and it happened like that because you're not getting the quality of dog like Macho Buck because you got a little of this in it and a little of that in it, and it's really not bred that way. And like I said, I'm not gonna hold y'all brothers here too long. Just here to speak about that buck pedigree. And if you really look on the buck pedigree and read, because he got several pedigrees on online ped, but if you read the one that says this is not the real, the other pedigree is not the real pedigree. The one that says the other pedigree is not the real pedigree, that's the real pedigree. That's the one I was reading off of the other night. I just didn't stroll down the stream on the screen and see it where it said this is the original, this is the real pedigree. I know I was just reading from the bottom part where the actual family tree was at. But if I would just stroll down the picture, it would have told me right then that this was the real ped, and the other ped that brother's speaking about with the tombstone in it is not the real ped. So to the brother that was in my comments, what can you say when the people that had the dog is telling you different? You got to only go by what the people that had the dog said. We don't got nobody else out here that had Buck, that know where Buck originated from outside of Mr. Pat Patrick. And then, like he told you, STP didn't even know where he originated from. He went and bought it from one of his friends. So, it is what it is, man. That's why I tell brothers, man, stop putting these fake pedigrees on online pedigree. Stop putting these pedigrees up here that you heard this and you heard that, and you putting the pedigree up there if you don't got no proof of it. Because you're just going to screw brothers up later on down the line. 20 years, 30 years later, you're just going to screw brothers up. So breed them great dogs out there, man. Like I always say, that buck stuff, no tombstone in it, goes damn good with that Red Boy Jocko. Straight Red Boy Jocko, not mixed yet. And me, myself, personally, Mayday is a tombstone Bolio dog. And then another thing is you gotta really be careful. And maybe it might be something to ask Mr. Pat Patrick if he's still living. Maybe it might be something to ask him is the Mayday breeding as far as Hollisworth Dolly, and the dogs that she came down off of. Are those dogs bred the way they said they was bred? Because that could really eliminate some of the tombstone. A lot of dogs, if them dogs weren't bred that way, and we see Bolio was scattered all across the country. You know what I'm saying? So that might be a good question to ask Mr. Patrick if he's still living. Like I said, big salute out to Battlebred Concept for the great interview and having an interview that I can go back and get some knowledge from to give these brothers in modern day time about a dog that they said was Tombstone Bolio just last week. And then you got the man who had it that said straight Bolio, 5/8 Bolio, and a third 3/8 of the other dogs. You know where you got it from first. Your boy PB K9s giving it to you fair and unbiased, raw and uncut. Y'all stay safe. Y'all stay legal out there. And I'm out.